Tottenham Hotspur have appointed Thomas Frank as their new head coach.
And the consistency and the players know the patterns. But of course I'm aware that we need to be flexible sometimes.
You look what Thomas Frank has done over the course of 7 highly successful years, you can understand why Tottenham would be interested.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Astetka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. It is episode 250, which is absolutely wild to me. I cannot believe we have done 250 episodes of the Tottenham Depot. I've got Scott alongside me, Scott G. Bird. What's going on, my friend?
Well, on our way to 1,000 episodes, so long may
quarter
the
of the
Tottenham
way
Depot
there.
Continue. Quarter of the way there, man. We're almost as old as the United States here at the Depot, right? I think is the old 250 coming up next summer, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's right. You're forcing me to do some quick math here in my brain. Yeah, I think that math.
It is 250.
Yeah,
but at the same time, let's be clear. USA sucks. Nothing to be proud of these days. But anyways, 250 episodes. Cheers to the Tottenham Depot. Wish we had a few better results. I mean, nothing drastic happened, right? We're not hitting any panic buttons. But I wish we had a few brighter matches to talk about. But always good to be here.
Yeah, we do have 3 different results to talk about: a win, a loss, and a draw, and we will bounce around to all of them. Just for the listeners' sake, we are recording this on Saturday this week. It is Saturday evening here in the States. Spurs men played today against Brighton. We're certainly going to talk about that. They played earlier in the week in the Champions League, of course, and Spurs women suffered their first defeat of the season yesterday at the hands of Manchester City. So we're gonna bounce around to all of that, talk about some injury stuff. But where do you want to start, Scott? I kind of want to just knock out the Champions League game, honestly, because I don't think there's a whole heck of a lot to say. This was a very I'm just gonna say it was a kind of a boring game. Like, there wasn't a whole hell of a lot going on. There was certainly some atmosphere to it. It was the Champions League back in N17. That's always going to bring something. The tifo before the game was incredible. I very much enjoyed that. But this was a sloppy match. It was well defended in the end, at least from one side. And obviously it's won by Spurs on a really strange own goal from Villarreal's keeper. But overall, these teams combined for just barely over a goal in XG. Like, this was not a rip-roaring affair from the Champions League. In fact, I think it was the only Champions League match this week that had only 1 goal between it. I have to double-check that, but at least it was on that day. Like, it seemed like the goals were flying throughout the Champions League this week, but not at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Yeah, I'm really not that surprised, because I think Tottenham and Villarreal are both teams that they're not going to completely oppress their opponent into the way that they want to play football. I think the old Spurs would have under Thomas Frank. We certainly won't be doing such. And then obviously when you have a team that you never play and you really don't know much about, I think both teams were just kind of easing into their Champions League campaign and looking to kind of fill one another out in this match, right? So we'll take the own goal. We're super fortunate. It's still a good ball in from Lucas, right? So something had to be earned. I wouldn't say it's a fantastic ball, but he got in a good position and put a ball across the face of goal. And when you put the ball towards the net, good things can happen, right? So not an overly impressive match, but we keep a clean sheet, and anytime you keep a clean sheet in the Champions League, I don't think you can be upset. And when it comes down to it, you secured 3 points, which going into this league phase, right, starting off with 3 points is something that was really important for Spurs to have a chance of continuing on in the competition, I think.
No question about it. I'll just correct myself, by the way. Olympiacos and Paphos did play a 0-0 draw on Wednesday, but I think that's the only other game that had 1 or fewer goals in it this week in the Champions League, from what I can see. So certainly not the most rip-roaring affair. I do want to talk about Lucas Bergvall, because he was once again pretty damn good. I mean, this guy has just been, I know he gets, a little bit of credit, I guess, for the cross, as you mentioned, but I thought that this match really was won in defense. Mickey Van de Ven was just incredible, and everyone else just kind of did a job. Like there wasn't a whole lot going on for either team, as we mentioned. Only 3 corners apiece in this match. Spurs just weren't able to produce a lot. They really only got 1 shot on target, and that was obviously not even the one that went in. So no big chances for either side. It was just kind of one of those games. It was also a very poorly officiated match. There were multiple penalty shouts that were missed. VAR is just continues to be a sore on the side of the football world at this point. And the only other kind of note that I had from this one was, I thought Juan Foyth looked pretty good. He looked like quite a good player coming out of La Liga, and I'm happy for him. He's really had a nice career in Spain and is doing well for himself, and I was just kind of pleased to see that. I always thought he was one that could make it in the Premier League, but I'm glad that he's doing what he's doing in La Liga. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, a good career in La Liga, he captained the side in a Champions League match, right? So not many people can say they've captained any team in a Champions League match. So yeah, happy for Juan Foyth. But yeah, on the Spurs side, Bergvall is fantastic. I think a quick shout to João Paulinho, who I thought came in late in the game and really shored things up for us, and I don't think we get a clean sheet if he doesn't come in. And then I'll say that back line of Porro, Romero, Van de Ven, and Spence looks to be a really tough back line to beat. I think you have Spence, who's very capable of helping get forward, but also a really solid defender, and I think gives Porro a little bit more breathing room and just affords him a little less liability when Porro wants to get involved in the attack, as he often does so well. So yeah, that back line, and I think we'll maybe talk about that when we talk about Brighton today, a certain change to that back line, right?
No question.
But on Tuesday, that back line was really fantastic, and I think Jed Spence deserves a lot of credit, because I think Mickey Van de Ven just seems to be really comfortable with Jed to his left, and that really matters. So.
Yeah, no question about it. Spurs do not have a Champions League match this week. We will talk about what they do have this week, but they are back in Champions League action at the end of the month, on the final day of the month, in fact, September 30th. It's a Tuesday, and they're going to face their familiar foes, Bodo Glimt, away, who Spurs, of course, beat in the Europa League semifinals last year. That is the next Champions League match on the docket. Again, I didn't want to spend a ton of time on Villarreal. There wasn't much to talk about. I'm glad we did. I'm glad it was 3 points. Spurs now, by the way, unbeaten in 21 straight home European matches, which
crazy.
We talked about wanting to build a fortress, right? I'd say it's going pretty well in Europe so far. Let's work on it in the league, but it's going well in Europe. Let's talk about the draw this morning. Brighton 2, Spurs 2. Obviously not a good start to this game, as Brighton went up 2-0, and I don't even know for sure that I felt that bad about it. It was like one of those matches where Spurs were really on the front foot, really going for it, really had a lot going for them, and then found themselves down 2-0. And I guess when I zoom out, I kind of think I really can appreciate the fact that they were able to scrap a point out of this match. What we thought would be a tough away match to Brighton, who are a good, promising team. They always come to play. They obviously gave it to us last year twice. So I thought this was a real sign of good thing, like a little bit of moxie from Spurs, at least, even if the performance was not great all around.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm noticing maybe is that Thomas Frank, against these like mid-table teams, isn't quite sure what to make of his squad, and I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, I think it's way too early for us to say anything about Frank getting things wrong and like highlighting it right, because if you look at Bournemouth and you look at Brighton, similar situations. I personally thought that our best approach to Brighton would have been to, I don't want to say sit in a defensive block, but just play a bit more pragmatic and invite Brighton to get on the ball a little bit and then beat them in transitions in the midfield. They're not terribly fast at the back. They're really good up top, right? So I think I thought I was wrong in what I expected to see. You know, like you said, we definitely were more interested in getting forward and attacking them as much as we would expect Brighton to attack us, and I think it ended up costing us a little bit with those those 2 quick early goals. The back line was exposed. And I think when we mentioned earlier, we talk about the back line, I think Udogie coming in disrupted things a little bit. And I don't want to like point out Udogie as like having a horrible game or anything, but all I mean by that is there's a different fluidity, there's a different chemistry to what Van de Ven's been working with Spence, and Udogie I think is much more focused and being involved in the attack than Spence has been, and I think that hurt us today. Honestly, I think Udogie is still playing a little bit of the Ange system out of his system right now, right? And that's probably just because he hasn't played any football yet this year, right? So I don't fault him, but I think that made an impact today.
I think it's interesting you bring up Udogie because I had him on my list too, but I had a kind of the opposite thought. I think he deserves a lot of praise for his performance today, and Thomas Frank said much of the same. He was everywhere, and I thought that I totally get what you're saying about the chemistry between Spence and Van de Ven that has been developed over the first few weeks of the season. I was really impressed by Udogie not only going forward today, but also in a lot of his defensive actions as well. I think he stood out to me as a guy who, and look, he should have fresh legs, but he looked fresher than everyone else, I would say, because he's gotten this kind of late start to the season coming back from the injury. I just thought he was everywhere to be seen, and I know you're not digging the guy out, but he was one of the top players on the pitch for me today. And I think that, you know, what we saw from that early goal, you brought up like Udogie thinks he's still playing Ange ball. I think the whole team for a moment there thought they were still playing Ange ball.
I would agree with that.
Like everyone got a little bit caught out there.
Yeah, I think, you know, I want to clarify because I think in individual moments, I think Udogie was good today for sure. I think he's always good going forward. That's never going to be a conversation that I'll have on this podcast, right? He's always going to be good going forward. And I think in individual moments defensively, he was good. I think kind of what you just got at, it was really just all about that chemistry. And I'm not sure Van de Ven's steps. Let me say this differently. I think Van de Ven's steps there because he's been playing with Spence for the last month, and Spence does cover him on that step, I think, in a way that Udogie maybe didn't today. But that's again not me saying Udogie isn't capable of doing so. Udogie just hasn't really played any football, and I think the back line, anytime you change the back line and it's early in the season, I think kinks have to get worked out, and I think that's really just everything that I'm getting at when I say that.
No question. I get all of that. I want to talk about the midfield for a minute because the other thing you mentioned is you thought that the strategy would have been to sit a little bit deeper and try to hit Brighton. And I think that the way that Thomas Frank set up this midfield, I do think that's almost what they were trying to do. You think of Palhinha, obviously, as the defensive sitter, but then playing Bergvall next to him. I know Bergvall can play more of an 8 role, but they were both kind of just back there and doing defensive duties, and then having Bergvall, as he does, pull things forward. I think the only problem with that is there was a lack of creativity other than Kudus up front, and Bergvall provides some of it, but he's more just like drag the ball forward rather than the creativity part. I thought that was what was lacking, and then once Xavi came on into the game, I thought that changed everything. Xavi coming on for Bentancur made it so that there was more creativity, and Spurs were able to get on the front foot a lot more, and obviously were able to get the equalizer eventually. But the midfield was really interesting to me because, like you said, maybe the plan was to double pivot and sit deep and try to hit on the counter, but there's not a lot going forward unless you're just getting immaculate. And Richarlison was very, very good and obviously got another goal. But unless you're getting absolutely immaculate hold-up play from Richarlison, that's going to be really hard to do to drag everybody forward. Yeah,
well, first, just so you don't get roasted in any comments, you said Palhinha had Bergvall next to him, and then Bergvall was dragging us forward. You meant Bentancur.
Bentancur, yes.
The first time you said Bergvall, and I know that.
I'm getting my B's mixed up, my friend.
Just clarifying for the listener. But yeah, it was the Palhinha-Bentancur double pivot in theory, right? And I think you and I talked about that before the game. I said I don't think we're going to be in like a defensive block, but I said in our group chat I expect us to kind of just look to sit in the center of the park and transition out of the middle third, right? It was kind of my thought. And then I also mentioned that I would expect us to look to push wide in those transitions because we had Odebear and Kudus on the field who both are our two best players at running at defenders, right, and just taking guys on 1v1 without a doubt. Those are the two guys you want. So it seemed pretty obvious to me that that was a strategy, and maybe it was, and it just didn't quite work out the way we expected it to. But we definitely were lacking any creativity with Paulinho and Bentancur in the midfield, which I'm sure Thomas Frank is a smart enough guy to realize that he was always risking that happening when he made that selection, but there was a game plan, and it I wouldn't even say it didn't work. I think it just got disrupted by an early goal, right? Anytime you have a plan and you concede that early, the plan kind of goes to shit and you regroup. So.
Well, and that's the thing they did. And the other thing that Spurs did a lot of is produce more opportunities on set pieces. They had 10 corners in this match. I mean, if Spurs are getting 8 to 12 corners every match, they're going to get at least 1 to 2 goals every once in a while in a match like this. And it's one of those things where you got to just keep producing the chances. And when you've got Kudus from the one side and Xavi eventually from the other, like, good things are certainly going to happen. You brought up Odebear. This was his first Premier League start under Frank. What did you think of his performance? Because I'm trying to bring him into my heart, if you will, but it's one of those things that's not fully meshing. I see there's parts of it there that are working for me, and then there's other parts where I'm still a little bit skeptical. Where are you at with Wilson Odebear at this point?
Yeah, I think you just got to develop a little bit more of an end product in the final third. I think he doesn't really do anything at the end of a play. Excuse me. But yeah, I think he's got to develop his end product, and he's still young. I'm not saying he can't, right? But it's just, for me, Wilson Odebear is just kind of there when he's on the field, and I don't really have much else to say, and I think that needs to improve.
Right. Yeah, and obviously there are options. We did find out prior to the match that Colomani was out for this match, didn't even make the squad because of dead leg. Which is news to me. He obviously made an appearance on Tuesday in the Champions League, and there was no word of it before the match, but turns out he did not make the squad, so that was not an option for the front line. Xavi obviously came on late, but we're still missing Dominic Solanke as well. There was an update on Solanke this week that he is progressing, but will still be out for the League Cup match this week as well. So he's progressing for. It's actually interesting. The exact quote was. The positive thing is that he's back on the grass and has been for 3 or 4 days. He's progressing forward slowly, but forward. It's too early for the Brighton game and Doncaster, but the positive thing is that he's on the grass and progressing forward. That from Thomas Frank. That line in the middle there, he's progressing forward slowly, but forward, leaves me with a little bit of, what does that mean? Because I think this is the big question I've had with Dominic Solanke. It's been a very mysterious injury. Is he close to returning? Is he progressing forward slowly but forward? It's a little bit of a word salad there from Thomas Frank, and I'm sure carefully and selectively so. So I'm skeptical but curious about what's going on there with Dominic Solanke and his return.
Yeah, I mean, I think touching grass doesn't really tell you much. I probably what it tells you is it's still a little ways out, right? Because the first time you touch grass after that kind of injury, then comes, first of all, deciding you're fully fit, but then getting yourself up to fitness, which is a challenge when you've, been rehabbing for a month or whatever it is. And I think us kind of panic buying Colomani and dropping our approach for Ademola Lookman at the last second probably tells us a little bit more about the Dom situation as well, right?
I thought that from the jump.
Yeah, you did for sure. And so I think he's still a little ways out. I also Colomani, I gotta give credit to my boy Robbie out at Seattle Spurs, but he had mentioned this in our Seattle Spurs group chat. But dead leg to me only means that Romero just fucking clattered him in training. That's the only thing that I can think of is what goes up for a header or a slide tackle, and I'm thinking when you go just punch your buddy right in the quad as hard as possible and give him a good old dead leg, right? That's the only thing that I can think of when I see that type of injury. So we really hope Colomani's back, because all jokes aside, we really could have used him today.
Well, and I think that if he's able to make the quick turnaround for the League Cup this week, I think that's a perfect opportunity to get him in there and get him some playing time. We're still not going to see Kota Takai either. There was also another update on Takai, and that is that he's very close to training with the group. They're hopeful that he will be training with the group coming this week, but he has still not seen any action, and I'm sure is quite far away. So those are kind of the injury updates as of late. As I mentioned, looking forward for this team, it's interesting. The games are obviously going to start coming thick and fast, as they do this time of year with midweeks and everything, but it's also a little bit lax. So Spurs are going to enter the League Cup this week. They enter the third round on Wednesday. They'll host Doncaster Rovers. Interestingly enough, I did look this up for folks that are interested. 19-year-old Damola Ajayi is on loan for Doncaster, and he made his first team debut with Spurs last season. And according to the BBC, players that are on loan for other players can play against the other in the League Cup, so long as the parent club has given written consent. So we'll have to find out come Wednesday whether or not Spurs have offered written consent for Ajayi to play against them in the League Cup. That'll be an interesting thing to watch going forward.
No, interestingly enough, too, we gave Villarreal written consent for Manor Solomon to play against us in the Champions League.
So not to correct you, but actually there's a rule because I looked this up as well, and I wanted to bring this up. In UEFA, there's actually a rule that clubs cannot apply any. This is the quote literally from UEFA. Clubs cannot apply any influence whatsoever over players that another club may or may not field in a match. So there was no permission needed or given for Solomon to play against Spurs if Villarreal so chose to.
Interesting.
In UEFA competitions, you can play against a parent club and it does not matter. And we've seen that over the last few years, especially in the Champions League. We've certainly seen it. Now the FA rules do state that loan players cannot play against a parent club in the Premier League or the FA Cup. But in the League Cup, you can get written consent from the parent club, and obviously in UEFA competitions, as I mentioned, it's just like free reign. So I just thought that was really interesting to note. But yeah, Spurs face Doncaster this week, but then next Saturday they welcome Wolves in the Premier League. Wolves are sitting, if they're not bottom, they're very close. They were bottom last I checked. So that should hopefully be, look, no match in the Premier League is easy, but that should be a little bit of an easier one. So, I don't know, after that you get the Bodo Glimt match, which Spurs know they can go away there and win. They just did it, even though it's the whole plastic pitch. Hey, at least it's late September and not January that you're going up there. Yeah. I mean, that's a positive as well. So maybe these next three matches against some quote-unquote lesser competition is a chance to get some guys some rotation and hopefully cook and get some points banked here. As you know, the games are coming. I just think that would be a really positive thing if they're able to do that. So, anything else?
I agree.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say I think this week we'll definitely see Tell. Hopefully, Kolo Muani. I would expect Brennan Johnson to get a start. I think Paulinho probably starts just because. I shouldn't say that. I'm thinking about the back line first, and obviously we're going to see Danzo start. I would highly expect to see Davies start. The fullback position is interesting to me because outside of Davies and Spence, right, we don't have any rotation based on the two that played the majority of today's match. So I wonder where Archie Gray fits into this. I don't know if you try him there, but I think Archie Gray ends up in the middle of the pitch, right? So
yeah, Thomas Frank has said he likes Archie Gray as a midfielder. I could easily see him playing in the number 6 role against Doncaster.
I think he will play in the 6.
That would fit.
The fullback position, like Romero and Van de Ven got to be rested in this game with their history of injuries.
One of them will probably start though. I have to imagine one of them will start with Danso. Unless he goes Danso Davis, which I wouldn't.
I can definitely see that.
I don't know. It's an interesting one, but even over these next few weeks are going to be interesting because of the rotation side of it, and obviously we've talked about all these injuries and players coming back. So how can you integrate? I mean, Brennan Johnson, Wilson Odobert, Matisse Tell, like these are all guys that are going to need those minutes to try to get into the flow of this front three. And then obviously I would try to give guys like Kudus a rest. I would try to give guys like Bergvall a rest. Try to give Porro a rest. You know, I could easily see him playing a doggy on the left and Spence on the right too. Just
me too.
Throw those guys out there, give Porro the rest. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of rotation we do get to experience over the next few weeks.
Yep, no doubt about it. It's also interesting. We talk about the midfield depth, but I think Bergvall needs a rest. Maybe Sarr comes in, right? But then you turn around and you have Wolves, and then you turn around and you go to Bodo Glimt. So the teams are I wouldn't say the strongest teams, as we've already talked about, but Wolves is a bogey team for us, and we're going to the Arctic Circle, right? So I think, anyways, it's just going to be very interesting to see what Frank does. I think these next 10 days will tell us a lot about what the squad looks like.
I do like what I see from Wolves' defense, though. Like they've already given up 12 goals in 5 matches, so I'm encouraged by that, and hopefully Spurs can just go cook and get the job done. It seems to be going to the Molineux is a little tougher than playing them at home, but I agree with you. Wolves have definitely been a bogey team, and the fact that they sit bottom of the table right now means you better not blink. You don't want to overlook them at all. So that's the way to go about that. You want to chat about Spurs Women for a minute here, because they did suffer a pretty lopsided defeat on Friday. It was the first defeat of the season. In fact, they had not allowed a goal until shipping 5 against Manchester City in this game.
Yeah.
A 5-1 defeat, and honestly, it was about as bad as the scoreline looked. The first 15 to 20 minutes, I thought Spurs looked really positive and on the front foot. And then once the first goal went in for City, it was just kind of a little bit of a flood. Spurs just kind of hung their heads a little bit. Beth England, the captain, said as much after the match, and it just didn't really look all that pretty from going forward.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, this game really frustrated me. Not to the point where I was like upset and having it ruin my day after the match, right? But while watching the match, it was just irritating, maybe is the better word, right? But it all came down to mentality. I think, though, like you said, the first 15, 20 minutes did look good. And as soon as we conceded, we completely gave up, which just tells me we went into that game feeling like David versus Goliath, right? That we have an absolute mountain to climb, and for 15, 20 minutes, you're like, okay, we can do this, and as soon as you concede, you say, oh, we tried. But it's just too hard for us today, right? And that's what's so irritating and frustrating to me. I think as soon as we went down, I can't tell you how many times we passed the ball out of bounds under no pressure. I think at least 5 times. I saw that happen right on the touchline. We would receive the ball and stay completely stagnant when receiving the ball. The movement off the ball was non-existent. I said it in the group chat, but what I really felt was that every player who received a pass was completely just waiting to be swarmed by City defenders and ready to just give the ball up. Like, there was just absolutely no confidence on the ball once we went down. And I've been there, right? I'm not trying to be critical or tear anyone down when I say that. But I know very well what it feels like to be playing soccer with absolutely zero confidence, and that's what I saw from Spurs Women against City. So I think they're going to have to tuck their tail between their legs and learn from this one. Martin Ho was visibly frustrated on the touchline, just, dare I say, pissed, right? He was fuming, and as you already mentioned, Beth was really upset in her post-match interview, which I actually haven't seen. So I say that, with nothing but trust for folks like yourself who have told me that, right? But it's not a pretty day.
She really kind of, she said as much. She was pretty upset and bothered by how the team reacted to giving up a goal and then another. And I just think it's one of those things that, look, it's one match, obviously, and the first 2 were so positive that you're not going to let this derail you. It has to be stated that this is proof of how far off Spurs are from the top of the WSL. Yeah. Like that, this is evident. It's something we know, but they are still showing some small signs here and there of, okay, this is different than last year. Like I wouldn't have expected this kind of scoreline or this kind of performance based on what I had seen the first 2 matches. But I still don't. I don't see this as a major step back. I see this as a small step back, certainly, but it's something that they can still learn from and build on, and they're still learning a new system. They're still, and the other big wrinkle that was kind of that we saw for the first time in this match was both Bethany England playing in that more midfield role, that dropped role from front, with Tamberg playing basically as the number 9. And that was an interesting dynamic. Now, both players were subbed off before the 90 minutes was up, but I thought it was interesting to see them trying something a little bit different. We saw last season and even a little bit in the season before, when their injuries weren't overlapping, we saw Martha Thomas and Bethany England trying some of this out. I'm interested to see how it looks when you get to mix different players in to different attacking patterns. And obviously, you've got Ottanen and Naz coming from the outside. We haven't even mentioned Olivia Holt's absolute banger of a goal in this match, because it was awesome. It was kind of the one bright spot. If you have not seen the Olivia Holt strike from this match, it was the lone kind of, like I said, the lone bright spot, if you will, other than Bunny Shaw being stopped on a penalty, which, holy crap, Bunny Shaw did not score in this match, which is just a miracle.
Crazy.
She did have an assist, but even from the penalty spot, Bunny Shaw was denied, which you would expect the end of days for something like that happening. But certainly go check out Olivia Holt's goal, because it was something. But like I said, I do think there's building blocks to be made here. It's just you're gonna see 5-1 and you're gonna go, uh-oh, it's the old Spurs women are back. But I think there is a little bit to take from this one, as lopsided as it was, and like you said, as frustrating as it was to watch. And it's frustrating for the players, frustrating for Martin Ho, but they don't have a lot of time to sulk, because they do get right back into action this Wednesday. They are playing in the League Cup against Aston Villa, so you can't pout, you can't sulk about it. You just gotta get up off the mat and go again. They play Wednesday in the League Cup, and then they're back in action in the WSL on Sunday. They travel to the King Power Stadium to face Leicester City next week. So we'll have to see what comes of it. But I am still very interested in what Martin Ho has cooking and what he's able to get out of these players, because I do think that there's something to build on here.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like you said, our first couple of matches we looked really good, and I think maybe that's why it felt like such an absolute ass kicking against City on Friday, right? Because I think we all maybe thought that the squad could just put in a better shift based on what we were seeing, right? I don't think anyone is surprised that we didn't take any points away from that match, but I think anyways, we just expected more because of those first 2 games. But the team, really all that happened is they got beat between the ears. And I, in a weird way, may almost take that than just like getting beat because the soccer wasn't understood well enough, right? Or whatever you want to say. But I think Martin Hill can sort it out, and nothing like bouncing back in a cup match to right that wrong. Especially for this team that they're not in a position to win the Women's Super League, but cups are always on the table, right? So I think these domestic cup competitions are really important for this team right now. So I'm excited for Wednesday.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Just quickly before we get out of here, a kind of a solemn farewell. Matt Beard passed away today. The former Liverpool women's coach, coached at Chelsea, coached at a lot of different WSL and teams in England. Also coached with the Boston Breakers here in the States at one point. It was kind of shocking to learn the news that Matt Beard passed away today, age 47, just far too young.
Yeah, super sad. Way too young. Just a reminder to appreciate every day that we're given in this life, because just really surprising news to see somebody, again, 47 is not an old age, right? And just really sad to see him go, man. Prayers to his family for sure.
Yeah, Liverpool released a statement offering their condolences to the family, obviously, and just a really tough one to take. Safe home to Matt Beard. I think that's going to do it, my friend, unless we have anything else to get off our chest before we call it an episode.
I don't think so, man.
Your Indiana Fever are still alive in the WNBA playoffs, I saw. Massive
victory. Honestly, I didn't expect it to get done at all. Taking the series to 3 games, I don't think was that crazy. I think people would expect that, but to win by a point really at the last second against Atlanta was pretty fantastic. We got the Aces next, so gonna be a tough one, but the furthest the Fever have gone in the playoffs in a decade, so up the Fever.
Yeah, should be interesting to watch. All right, my friend, that's going to do it for this episode of the Tottenham Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page at youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. You can also leave us a rating and review on whatever app you like that you listen to your podcast. It really helps spread the word about the show. You can follow us on the socials as well at Tottenham Depot. You can follow me at Ace Detka. You can follow Scott at Scott G. Bird. We will wrap at you next week at some point. We'll as we do, we'll get together, we'll pod, we'll talk Spurs, we'll love life. We'll carry on. As always, this has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. Come on, you Spurs.